My name is Amberly, and I'm 26 years old. I stood frozen in my parents' driveway staring at the brand new Mercedes that had cost me my entire future. The memory of checking my college fund account and seeing zero balance still made my hands shake. My sister Amelia sat smirking in the driver's seat while I struggled to breathe. "That was supposed to be my medical school tuition," I whispered. My parents just shrugged. Amelia threatened to leave forever if we didn't buy it. But they had no idea I'd been recording everything. Before I continue my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. If you've ever felt betrayed by family who should have protected you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I fought back against the ultimate betrayal. Trust me, what happens next will show you that sometimes losing everything is the only way to find your true strength. Growing up, I was always the responsible daughter in our household. From the time I could remember, I brought home straight A's, participated in every science fair, and never gave my parents a moment of trouble. When I turned 16, I immediately got a part-time job at the local pharmacy, saving every penny I could for my future. My parents had been promising me since I was 10 years old that they were building a college fund for my education. Education is the most important investment we can make in your future, my father would say, showing me the bank statements every birthday to prove the account was growing. My younger sister Amelia was different from the very beginning. Where I was quiet and studious, she was loud and demanding. Where I worked for everything I had, she simply took what she wanted through manipulation and tantrums. I still remember the night before my senior year science fair when Amelia destroyed my project because I wouldn't let her use my laptop. Instead of punishing her, my parents bought her a brand new tablet to keep the peace and told me I should have been more careful where I left my work. This became the pattern of our childhood. Amelia would threaten, scream, or destroy something, and my parents would cave immediately. "We have to keep Amelia happy," my mother would whisper to me after each incident. "You know how sensitive she is. You're the strong one, Amberly. You can handle disappointment better than she can." By the time I was in college, I was working 3 different jobs to cover my living expenses and textbooks. My parents assured me repeatedly that the college fund they'd saved would cover all 4 years of undergraduate education plus medical school. That $75,000 is untouchable, my father promised during my junior year. "It's specifically for your education and nothing else." I believed them completely. Why wouldn't I? They'd shown me the statements, made deposits in front of me on birthdays and holidays, and constantly praised my academic achievements. The day I received my acceptance letter to the pre-med program at State University was supposed to be one of the happiest of my life. My boyfriend Brock brought flowers to celebrate, and we spent the evening planning our future together. He was working as an electrician, saving money for our life after I finished medical school. Unlike my family, Brock came from humble beginnings where hard work was valued over manipulation. He understood sacrifice and supported my dreams without question. Looking back now, I should have noticed the red flags starting to appear. Whenever I brought up transferring the college fund money for tuition payments, my parents would change the subject. "We'll handle all of that," my mother would say, waving her hand dismissively. "You just focus on your studies." My father started avoiding my calls when I asked about meeting with the bank to set up the education disbursements. But I trusted them. These were my parents, the people who had promised to support my education above all else. I had no reason to doubt their word until that horrible day when everything came crashing down. The morning I went to the bank to confirm the fund transfer for my medical school tuition started like any other day. I had all my paperwork ready, acceptance letter in hand, and a heart full of hope for my future. The bank manager's expression when he pulled up my account information should have been my first warning. "I'm sorry, Miss Amberly, but this account was closed 2 weeks ago," he said, turning his computer screen toward me. The full balance was withdrawn by the account holders. I stared at the screen showing a zero balance where $75,000 should have been. My hands shook as I dialed my parents' number repeatedly, each unanswered call increasing my panic. I drove home, breaking every speed limit, my mind racing with possible explanations. Maybe they moved the money to another account for better interest rates. Maybe there was some misunderstanding at the bank. Any explanation except the truth I was about to discover. The moment I turned onto our street, I saw it. A gleaming white Mercedes sat in our driveway, dealer plates still attached a giant red bow on the hood, like some mockery of a Christmas present. Inside the house, I found Amelia sprawled on the couch, scrolling through her phone and posting Instagram stories with her new car. "Oh, you're home early," she said without looking up, her voice dripping with false innocence. My parents sat at the dining table calmly eating lunch as if they hadn't just destroyed my entire future. When I demanded to know where my college fund had gone, my mother set down her fork with a sigh. "Amelia needed the car," she said simply, as if that explained everything. "She said she would kill herself if we didn't buy it for her. She was going to run away and never speak to us again." What choice did we have? The room spun around me as the full weight of their betrayal crashed down. Years of working multiple jobs, sacrificing social events to study, believing in their promises, all meaningless. My father couldn't even meet my eyes as he mumbled, "You're smart, Amberly. You'll figure something out. Maybe take out some loans or find a scholarship." Amelia finally looked up from her phone, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "I always knew they loved me more," she said, twirling the Mercedes keys around her finger. "You were just too stupid to see it." When I began sobbing, my parents immediately turned on me. "You're being selfish," my mother snapped. "Your sister has anxiety and depression. She needs support, not judgment. A car is essential for her mental health." The gaslighting was so immediate, so practiced, that I realized this wasn't a sudden decision. They had been planning this for months, maybe longer. Every reassurance about my untouchable college fund had been a lie designed to keep me compliant and working hard, while they plotted to give everything to Amelia. Brock arrived in the middle of my breakdown, taking in the scene with growing horror and anger. He held me as I sobbed out the story, his jaw clenched with barely controlled rage. "This is theft," he said firmly. "That money was earmarked for education. They can't just take it." But my parents just laughed. "The account was in our names," my father said with a shrug. "We can do whatever we want with our money." The fact that they now called it their money when for 16 years it had been Amberly's college fund made me physically ill. That night, Brock wanted me to leave with him immediately, but I made the decision to stay temporarily. I needed to gather evidence, understand exactly what had happened, and figure out my options. As I lay in my childhood bed, staring at academic achievement awards covering my walls, I promised myself this betrayal wouldn't be the end of my story. It would be the beginning of my fight for justice. The next morning, I confronted my parents with the legal documents I'd found in my father's home office. The college fund had actually been in my name since I turned 18, with my parents listed as custodians. Their withdrawal without my consent wasn't just unethical, it was illegal. The panic in their eyes told me they knew it too. "You wouldn't sue your own parents," my mother said, but her voice wavered with uncertainty. "We did what we thought was best for the family. Amelia is fragile. You've always been the strong one." Before I could respond, Amelia launched her first major attack. Within hours, my phone exploded with calls from extended family members, all parroting the same twisted narrative. According to Amelia's version, I was trying to make her homeless and destroy the family over jealousy about her new car. She claimed I had threatened her, that I was mentally unstable from the stress of school, and that our parents had bought the car with their own savings while my college fund remained untouched. The lies were so elaborate and delivered with such conviction that relatives I'd known my whole life turned against me without even asking for my side of the story. My Aunt Linda called me selfish and spoiled. My Uncle Robert said I should be ashamed of trying to tear the family apart. Cousins who had celebrated my academic achievements now posted on social media about how money had changed me for the worse. The speed with which Amelia poisoned the entire extended family against me was breathtaking. She had obviously prepared for this, knowing I would fight back, and had preemptively struck to isolate me from any family support system I might have had. The attacks escalated quickly from social manipulation to outright psychological warfare. Amelia began faking anxiety attacks whenever I was in the same room, hyperventilating and clutching her chest while my parents rushed to comfort her. "See what you're doing to your sister?" my mother would shriek at me. "You're literally killing her with your selfishness." The performances were so convincing that even I began to question myself. Was I being too harsh? Was a car really worth destroying my family? But then I would remember the $75,000 meant for my education, and my resolve would harden again. Everything changed the day I found Amelia's diary hidden in the garage. Reading through her entries from the past year made my blood run cold. She had never planned to run away. Every threat had been calculated manipulation. One entry from 6 months ago read, "Mom and Dad are so stupid. I told them I was suicidal, and they immediately promised to buy me whatever I want. Amberly's college fund is just sitting there. I bet I could get them to use it if I play this right." Another entry detailed her exact plan. "Threaten to disappear forever, cry about needing a car for my mental health, get them to drain the fund before Amberly needs it for medical school. By the time she finds out, it'll be too late." The premeditation was staggering. But Amelia wasn't done with just stealing my money and turning the family against me. Her second attack targeted the one person who still supported me unconditionally. She began showing up at Brock's workplace in increasingly inappropriate outfits, bringing him lunch he hadn't asked for, and loudly telling his coworkers how lucky they were to work with such a handsome man. The text messages started innocently enough, but quickly escalated to explicit photos and propositions. When Brock showed me the messages and immediately blocked her number, Amelia claimed he had been the one pursuing her. "Your boyfriend has been harassing me," she announced at dinner one night, fake tears streaming down her face. "He won't leave me alone. He says he's only with you for your future doctor money, but since that's gone now, he wants to be with me instead." The accusation was so outrageous that I actually laughed, which only made things worse. My parents immediately took her side, demanding that I break up with Brock to protect Amelia. When I refused and showed them the actual messages proving Amelia had been the aggressor, they accused me of fabricating evidence. "You're becoming obsessed and dangerous," my father said coldly. "Maybe you should find somewhere else to live until you can control yourself." That night, I had a long phone conversation with my Aunt Grace, my mother's estranged sister who lived across the country. She was the only family member who had reached out to hear my side of the story. "This doesn't surprise me at all," she said sadly. "Your mother has always enabled destructive behavior. Did you know your grandmother left education funds for all her grandchildren?" This was news to me. Aunt Grace explained that our grandparents had specifically set aside money for each grandchild's education, but the funds were controlled by their parents. "Let me guess," she said bitterly. "Amelia's fund mysteriously disappeared years ago, and now yours is gone too." The pattern was becoming clear. This wasn't the first time my parents had stolen from their children to fund Amelia's demands. But this time, they had gone too far, and I was old enough and strong enough to fight back. As Aunt Grace shared more family history and offered her support, I began planning my next moves. The war Amelia had started was far from over, but now I understood I wasn't just fighting for my money. I was fighting against a generational pattern of enabling and abuse that had to stop with me. Aunt Grace's information sent me diving into research I wished I had done years earlier. She overnight expressed me copies of my grandfather's will and trust documents, which painted a disturbing picture of systematic financial abuse. My grandfather had been a successful businessman who believed deeply in education. Upon his death, he had left substantial education trusts for each of his grandchildren, specifically protected from parental interference, except for direct educational expenses. Each grandchild was supposed to receive $100,000 for their education, managed by their parents, but with strict legal requirements for how the money could be used. What I discovered in those documents made me physically ill. Amelia's fund had indeed existed, and it had been steadily drained over 5 years for various luxury purchases, including a failed modeling career attempt, multiple vacations, and expensive clothes. The receipts were all there in the trust reports, barely disguised as educational expenses. Photography lessons that were actually professional headshots for Instagram. Study abroad programs that were really beach vacations in Cabo. Educational technology that turned out to be the latest iPhone every year. By the time Amelia graduated high school, her fund was completely depleted with nothing to show for it but a carefully curated social media presence. But the real shock came when I traced through the financial records of my own fund. The $75,000 my parents had shown me over the years wasn't even the full amount. My grandfather had left me the same $100,000 as Amelia, but my parents had been secretly borrowing from it for years. They'd taken $25,000 for home renovations, claiming it was to provide a better study environment for me. Another $10,000 disappeared for a family emergency that I now realized never existed. The Mercedes wasn't just the final withdrawal, it was the culmination of years of theft, disguised as parental financial management. The paper trail revealed something even more sinister. 3 months before draining my fund, my parents had taken out substantial loans against their house. They were drowning in debt from trying to maintain a lifestyle they couldn't afford, primarily to keep Amelia happy. The Mercedes purchase wasn't just about appeasing my sister's threats, it was about converting the last liquid asset they could access into something concrete before creditors came calling. They knew I would discover the theft eventually, but they figured by then it would be too late, and I would have no recourse except to accept it and move on like the good, responsible daughter I'd always been. But Amelia had known everything. Her diary entries matched perfectly with each withdrawal from both our funds. She had actively participated in the deception, helping my parents craft the lies and cover stories. One particularly cruel entry from last year read, "Watch Dad take another $5,000 from Amberly's fund today. Told him to say it was for home repairs. She's so focused on her stupid pre-med classes she'll never check. By the time she needs it for medical school, we'll have spent it all and she'll have to give up her dreams. Maybe then she'll stop thinking she's better than me with all her studying and perfect grades." This revelation led to Amelia's third and most vicious attack. Apparently realizing I was getting too close to the truth, she decided to use the nuclear option. I was at my job at the pharmacy when 2 police officers walked in asking for me. In front of my coworkers and customers, they explained that a report had been filed, claiming I had threatened my sister's life and was planning to burn down my parents' house for the insurance money. The humiliation of being questioned about these insane allegations at my workplace was exactly what Amelia had intended. Fortunately, the officers were professional and quickly realized the claims were baseless. Amelia had made the mistake of claiming I'd sent threatening text messages, but the timestamps she provided were during hours I could prove I was at work. Security footage from the pharmacy confirmed my alibi, and the officers apologized for the disruption. However, the damage was done. My manager, while sympathetic, suggested I take some time off to deal with my family situation. Customers who had witnessed the police visit now looked at me with suspicion. Amelia had successfully attacked my professional reputation along with my personal one. That evening, Brock's family made an offer that brought me to tears. His parents had a small apartment above their garage that they would rent to me for practically nothing until I could get back on my feet. "No child should be treated the way they're treating you," his mother said firmly. "You're welcome here as long as you need." The kindness of these people who had no obligation to help me stood in stark contrast to my own family's betrayal. I accepted gratefully and began planning my move. But my parents had one more betrayal in store. When I arrived home the next day to pack my belongings, I found the locks had been changed. My possessions were piled on the front lawn in garbage bags, many items destroyed by the morning rain. Photo albums from my childhood were water-damaged beyond repair. My laptop with all my medical school application materials was mysteriously missing. Important documents, including my birth certificate and social security card, were scattered in the mud. Neighbors gathered to watch the spectacle, some offering help, while others whispered among themselves about the family drama. As I salvaged what I could from the wreckage of my belongings, I found something that changed everything. Hidden in the lining of my old jewelry box was a letter from my grandmother that I'd never seen before. Written just before her death, it outlined her wishes for her grandchildren's education and included a crucial piece of information. She had been worried about my parents' financial management and had secretly established a small separate account in my name, a loan at a different bank meant to be a graduation gift when I completed my undergraduate degree. It wasn't much, maybe $10,000 with interest, but it was enough to hire a lawyer and fight back properly. My parents and Amelia had stolen almost everything from me, but they had made a crucial error. They thought I would crumble without family support or financial resources. They believed their lifetime of gaslighting and manipulation had broken me down enough that I would simply accept this injustice and disappear. They were wrong. Standing in the rain surrounded by my destroyed belongings, I felt something inside me crystallize into diamond-hard determination. They had created their own worst enemy, and I was going to make sure they faced consequences for every single betrayal. Armed with my grandmother's letter and the emergency fund she had hidden for me, I scheduled a consultation with my cousin Michael, who had recently passed the bar exam. Michael had been one of the few family members to remain neutral during Amelia's smear campaign, and after reviewing my evidence, his professional opinion was blunt. "This is textbook fraud and fiduciary breach," he said, spreading the trust documents across his desk. "Your parents had a legal obligation to use those funds only for education. We can definitely pursue both civil and criminal charges." The relief of having legal validation for what I already knew was overwhelming. Building the case required meticulous documentation, and I attacked the task with the same intensity I'd once applied to my studies. Every bank statement, every text message, every social media post where Amelia bragged about her new car became evidence. I discovered that Amelia had been careless in her arrogance, posting detailed stories about manipulating our parents into buying her the Mercedes. One video showed her laughing with friends about how she'd convinced them she was suicidal. "I should get an Oscar for that performance." She giggled, apparently forgetting that social media posts could be preserved and used as evidence. The recorded conversations I'd been gathering for weeks proved invaluable. Legal or not in my state, they painted a clear picture of the premeditation and cruelty behind the theft. One particularly damning recording captured my mother admitting they knew taking the money was wrong but did it anyway because they thought I would never actually pursue legal action against family. My father could be heard in the background saying, "She'll get over it. She always does." "Remember when we gave away her dog because Amelia was pretend allergic? She forgave us, then she'll forgive us now." But Amelia wasn't content to let the legal process play out. Her fourth attack targeted my relationship with Brock using tactics that showed just how far she was willing to go. She created a fake dating profile using photos she'd stolen from my destroyed belongings, then sent explicit messages to Brock's ex-girlfriend Serena, making it appear that I was trying to seduce her. The messages included details about Brock that only someone close to him would know, making them seem authentic. Serena, confused and upset, confronted Brock about why his current girlfriend was propositioning her. Fortunately, Serena was intelligent enough to realize something wasn't right when the messages became increasingly unhinged and desperate. She agreed to meet with Brock and me where we explained the situation and showed her evidence of Amelia's previous false allegations and impersonations. Not only did Serena agree to testify about the fake profiles, but she also revealed that Amelia had reached out to her weeks earlier trying to get dirt on Brock. "She offered me $500 for any embarrassing photos or stories about him," Serena told us. "I thought it was weird and blocked her, but now it all makes sense." The universe seemed to be aligning in my favor when I discovered the existence of my grandmother's second hidden account. The bank manager, after verifying my identity and reviewing the documentation, revealed that my grandmother had been even more clever than I'd realized. She'd set up the account with specific instructions that it could only be accessed by me personally after my 21st birthday, with no parental oversight allowed. The balance had grown to nearly $15,000, with interest more than enough to cover legal fees and give me breathing room to figure out my future. Michael filed the civil suit for fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and theft, seeking full restitution of the stolen education funds, plus damages. The dollar amount, including penalties and interest, came to over $150,000. When my parents were served with the papers, their reaction was predictable. They immediately called me cycling between threats and tearful manipulation. "How could you do this to your own family?" my mother wailed. "We'll lose the house." Is that what you want, to see your parents homeless? But their biggest mistake came when they tried to hide assets before the court proceedings. Amelia posted photos of the Mercedes at a dealership, claiming she was trading it in for something more economical. In reality, they were trying to sell it to a friend for cash to hide the money from the judgment. Unfortunately for them, Michael had already filed for a preliminary injunction freezing their assets, including the car. When they discovered they couldn't legally sell it, Amelia lost control completely. The security footage from Brock's workplace parking lot captured everything in crystal clear detail. Amelia arriving at 2 a.m, keying not just Brock's car, but 3 others to make it look random. She slashed tires and spray-painted obscene messages on the windshield. What she didn't realize was that the business had recently upgraded their security system after a series of break-ins. The high-definition footage showing her face clearly as she caused thousands of dollars in damage became the basis for criminal charges, including felony vandalism. The family divide became absolute as members chose sides. Some, seeing the mounting evidence, began reaching out with apologies and their own stories of Amelia's manipulation. Others dug in deeper, insisting I was destroying the family over money. The most painful betrayal came from my godmother, who had always claimed to love me like her own daughter. She testified in a deposition that I had always been jealous of Amelia, and had probably manipulated the evidence against her. The fact that she did this while wearing jewelry my parents had bought her with money from my education fund added an extra layer of insult to the injury. During this time, my health began to suffer from the constant stress and anxiety. I developed severe insomnia and stress-related digestive issues. The dream of medical school seemed to slip further away with each passing day, consumed by legal battles instead of studying. It was during one particularly dark night, when I was questioning whether any of this was worth it, that Brock did something that changed everything. He got down on one knee in his parents' garage apartment and proposed. "I know this isn't the romantic proposal you deserve," he said, "but I want you to know that whatever happens with your family, with school, with everything, I'm here for good. You're not alone in this fight." The engagement gave me renewed strength, but it also triggered Amelia's most desperate actions yet. An anonymous tip came through Michael's office from someone claiming to have recordings of Amelia bragging about the entire scheme. The tipster turned out to be one of Amelia's former best friends, Hannah, who had finally had enough of being used and manipulated. Hannah provided hours of recordings where Amelia detailed not just the college fund theft, but years of schemes against other family members. She'd faked injuries to sue a cousin's business. She'd planted drugs in another cousin's car to get them arrested and removed from grandmother's will. The pattern of destruction was staggering. With trial approaching and evidence mounting, my parents made one last attempt at reconciliation. They offered to pay back $25,000 over 10 years if I would drop all charges and sign a non-disclosure agreement. "It's the best we can do," my father said during a meeting at Michael's office. "Take it, or we'll fight this to the end and everyone loses." The fact that they still saw themselves as the victims offering to return a fraction of what they stole, as if it were generous, told me everything I needed to know. I rejected their offer and prepared for court, knowing that whatever happened I had already won by refusing to be their victim anymore. The weeks leading up to the court date were filled with increasingly desperate attempts by my family to avoid consequences. My mother developed a series of mysterious illnesses that required emergency room visits whenever a deposition was scheduled. The medical bills they were racking up trying to generate sympathy were ironically more than what it would have cost to simply return my stolen funds. Each health scare was accompanied by flying monkeys, family friends who would call me to report on my mother's declining condition and how the stress I was causing was killing her. But the most dramatic pretrial event was Amelia's final, most spectacular implosion. 2 weeks before the civil trial, she announced on social media that she was pregnant and that the stress of my lawsuit had caused complications. She posted ultrasound photos, created a baby registry, and gave tearful interviews to anyone who would listen about how I was trying to destroy her unborn child's future. The narrative was perfectly crafted to generate maximum sympathy and paint me as a monster who would attack a pregnant woman over money. The story fell apart when Hannah Amelia's former friend noticed something odd about the ultrasound photos. A reverse image search revealed they had been stolen from a pregnancy blog from 3 years earlier. When confronted with this evidence, Amelia doubled down, claiming she had lost the baby due to stress and was using old photos to cope with her grief. The lie was so transparent that even some of her most ardent supporters began to question her credibility. The unraveling of the pregnancy lie triggered a cascade of revelations. My mother's mysterious illnesses were exposed when a nurse at the hospital who happened to be married to one of my cousins revealed that my mother had been coaching herself on symptoms from medical websites to fake various conditions. The tests always came back negative, but the performance was convincing enough to generate temporary sympathy and delay legal proceedings. On the day of the civil trial, the courthouse scene was like something from a movie. My extended family filled one side of the gallery, split between those supporting me and those still clinging to Amelia's version of events. Brock's family filled the other side, a solid wall of quiet support that meant more than they could know. My parents arrived looking haggard, having aged years in the months since this began. Amelia, however, strutted in wearing designer clothes I recognized as recent purchases, apparently still spending money they claimed not to have. The trial itself was devastating for my parents. Michael methodically presented evidence of the trust fund's intended use, the systematic theft over years, and the deliberate nature of the final withdrawal. Amelia's social media posts and diary entries were entered into evidence, each one painting a clearer picture of intentional fraud. When Amelia took the stand, she tried to maintain her victim narrative, but Michael's cross-examination was surgical. He caught her in lie after lie, each contradiction further damaging their defense. The most damaging testimony came from an unexpected source. Cameron, Amelia's ex-boyfriend from 2 years ago, had reached out to Michael after hearing about the trial. He testified about Amelia's long history of manipulation and provided evidence of similar schemes she'd run on his family. She had convinced his parents to invest in a fake business venture, promising huge returns, but ultimately stealing $30,000. They had been too embarrassed to pursue charges, but Cameron had kept all the documentation. The judge's ruling was comprehensive and damning. Full restitution of the stolen education funds was ordered, plus interest and penalties, bringing the total to over $170,000. My parents were given 90 days to pay or face asset seizure, including the sale of their house. The judge specifically noted the breach of fiduciary duty and the premeditated nature of the theft, stating it was one of the most egregious cases of parental financial abuse he had seen. But the civil judgment was just the beginning of their consequences. The criminal charges for the vandalism of Brock's car moved forward, and the evidence was overwhelming. The security footage, combined with the thousands of dollars in damage and the clear intent to harass and intimidate, resulted in felony charges. At her criminal trial, Amelia finally faced real consequences for her actions, receiving a conviction for felony vandalism with a sentence of 2 years probation, 300 hours of community service, and mandatory psychological counseling. The family fracture was complete and irreversible. My parents were forced to sell their house to pay the judgment, moving into a small apartment in a different part of town. The extended family members who had supported them found themselves reevaluating their relationships as more of Amelia's schemes came to light. Several cousins came forward with their own stories of money lent and never returned, items stolen and blamed on others, and lies told to create family conflicts. During this period, something unexpected happened that showed me how much my life had already changed for the better. The medical school I had originally planned to attend reached out after a local news station picked up the story of the trial. They were impressed by my perseverance and determination in the face of such adversity. While I had missed the enrollment window for the current year, they offered me deferred admission for the following year, with a partial scholarship specifically designated for students who had overcome significant obstacles. As the dust settled from the legal battles, Amelia's life continued to spiral. Without my parents' enabling and financial support, she was forced to face real consequences for the first time. The criminal record made it difficult for her to find employment. The friends who had initially supported her began distancing themselves as her lies became impossible to maintain. She was evicted from her apartment for non-payment, and the Mercedes was eventually repossessed when she couldn't make the insurance payments. My parents made several attempts to re-establish contact through various flying monkeys. The messages were always the same mixture of guilt-tripping and denial of responsibility. "We're living in poverty because of you," one letter read. "I hope you're happy knowing you destroyed your family over money." The complete inability to acknowledge their own actions in creating this situation showed me they had learned nothing. They still saw themselves as victims of my unreasonable demands rather than perpetrators of a massive theft. The last time I saw them in person was at a family funeral 6 months after the trial. They looked older, smaller, somehow diminished by the loss of their facade of respectability. Amelia wasn't with them, having been banned from family events after stealing from the deceased's house during the wake. My mother tried to approach me, tears in her eyes, but I simply turned and walked away. There was nothing left to say. They had made their choices, and now they had to live with the consequences. Through all of this, Brock remained my constant support. His proposal in that garage apartment wasn't about the romance of the moment, but about the promise of a future built on trust and mutual respect. His family had shown me what real family looked like, supporting not because of obligation or manipulation, but because of genuine care and affection. As we planned our modest wedding, I realized that losing my biological family had opened the door to finding my chosen family, and that was ultimately a gift. 1 year later, I stood in front of the mirror in my small studio apartment near the medical school campus, adjusting my white coat for the first time. The journey to this moment had been nothing like I'd imagined as that naive girl saving every penny for her future. I'd lost my biological family but found my true self. The woman looking back at me was stronger, wiser, and more compassionate because of the trials I'd endured. Medical school was challenging, but in the best possible way. My professors often commented on my unusual maturity and perspective compared to my younger classmates. The life experience I'd gained through betrayal and legal battles translated into a deeper understanding of human nature that served me well in patient interactions. When classmates complained about the stress of exams, I remembered the stress of watching my entire future disappear and found organic chemistry almost relaxing by comparison. Brock and I had married in a small ceremony in his parents' backyard, surrounded by the people who had supported us through the darkest times. His mother walked me down the aisle, filling the role my own parents had abdicated. We exchanged rings we'd saved for, together simple bands that meant more than any expensive jewelry, because they represented promises we knew would be kept. The wedding cost less than what my parents had spent on Amelia's fake modeling headshots, but it was perfect in every way that mattered. Updates about my former family came through the grapevine occasionally. My parents were still living in their small apartment, working minimum wage jobs to make ends meet after burning through their careers with their reputation destroyed. They had attempted to declare bankruptcy to escape the judgment, but the court ruled that debts arising from fraud weren't dischargeable. They would be paying me back for years to come, a monthly reminder of their choices. Amelia's descent continued predictably. After violating her probation by committing petty theft, she'd spent 3 months in jail. Upon release, she'd cycled through a series of short-term living situations, burning bridges with anyone who tried to help her. The last I heard, she was living in a different state, having fled after scamming a church group that had tried to provide her with charity assistance. Without enablers, her true nature had become apparent to everyone, and she'd run out of people to manipulate. The extended family had slowly realigned after the truth came out. Many relatives who had initially attacked me reached out with apologies, sharing their own stories of being manipulated or stolen from over the years. I accepted some apologies and ignored others, learning to distinguish between those who genuinely hadn't known better and those who had chosen willful blindness. Aunt Grace became a regular part of my life, visiting for holidays and celebrating my achievements with the pride my parents should have shown. My experience led me to specialize in psychiatry, with a particular interest in family dynamics and financial abuse. During my clinical rotations, I found myself drawn to patients dealing with toxic family situations, able to offer not just medical advice, but genuine understanding. One attending physician noted that I had an unusual ability to see through manipulation tactics that fooled other students, a skill hard-earned through personal experience. I also began working with a campus organization that provided support for students from dysfunctional families. Many were struggling with guilt over cutting contact with toxic relatives or dealing with financial abuse similar to what I'd experienced. I shared my story selectively, always emphasizing that choosing your own well-being over family dysfunction wasn't selfish, but necessary. The scholarship fund I started was small, just a few $1,000s a year, but it helped students who had been financially sabotaged by their families continue their education. Therapy had been an essential part of my healing journey. My therapist helped me understand that my parents' favoritism and Amelia's narcissism were patterns established long before I was born. I wasn't responsible for their choices, and my success hadn't caused Amelia's failures. The guilt I'd carried about destroying my family was misplaced, because you can't destroy something that was already broken. All I'd done was refuse to be complicit in my own abuse any longer. The concept of chosen family became central to my new life. Brock's parents were the parents I should have had, celebrating my achievements without jealousy or conditions. My study group became siblings who supported each other through challenges without sabotage or competition. The older couple who lived next door adopted me as an honorary grandchild, sharing wisdom and cookies in equal measure. These relationships, built on mutual respect and genuine affection, showed me what family was supposed to be. Looking back, I recognized the gift hidden in the betrayal. If my parents had simply given me the college fund as promised, I might have gone through life never recognizing the toxic dynamics that had shaped my childhood. I might have continued trying to earn their love through achievement, never understanding that their love was conditional and corrupted by their enabling of Amelia. The theft had been a brutal awakening, but it had freed me from a lifetime of manipulation and disappointment. My grandmother's hidden letters became a source of ongoing comfort and guidance. She had written many over the years, tucking them away for me to find when I needed them most. One particularly meaningful passage read, "Sweet girl, I watch your parents dim your light to avoid outshining your sister, and it breaks my heart. Remember that eagles don't flock with turkeys, no matter how much the turkeys insist they're family." Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the freedom to soar away from those who want to clip your wings. The financial recovery had been slow, but steady. The court-ordered payments from my parents, combined with my scholarship and part-time work, allowed me to pursue my dreams without overwhelming debt. Every month when their payment arrived, I felt not vindication, but sadness for the relationship we could have had if they'd chosen differently. I used some of the money to pay for therapy, some for school, and some for the scholarship fund, transforming their betrayal into opportunities for healing and growth. The deepest lesson I learned was about the nature of love and sacrifice. My parents had claimed they sacrificed for family, but real sacrifice means putting your children's needs above your wants, not stealing from one child to appease another. Real love means supporting someone's dreams, not sabotaging them. Brock showed me real love every day in small ways, from coffee during late-night study sessions to celebrating every small victory as if it were a Nobel Prize. His parents showed me real family every time they introduced me as their daughter, no qualifying terms needed. As I near the end of my first year of medical school, ranked in the top 10% of my class, I sometimes wonder what my life would have looked like if that $75,000 had simply been transferred for my education as planned. I probably would have attended school immediately, graduated on a traditional timeline, and started my career sooner. But I wouldn't have Brock's unwavering support, his family's genuine love, or the hard-won wisdom that comes from surviving betrayal and choosing to thrive despite it. The money was never really what they stole from me. They stole my trust in family, my belief in unconditional love, my naive faith that parents always want what's best for their children. But in losing those illusions, I found something far more valuable. I found my own strength, my ability to stand up for myself, and the courage to build a life based on truth rather than manipulation. They thought they were taking my future when they drained that account, but instead, they freed me to create a better future than I ever could have imagined. To anyone watching who's dealing with family betrayal or financial abuse, know that you're not alone. The guilt you feel for protecting yourself is not justified. The family that truly loves you would never ask you to sacrifice your dreams to enable their dysfunction. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away and build a life that honors your worth. It's not easy, and the scars remain, but I promise you that freedom from toxicity is worth more than any amount of money. What about you? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own well-being? How did you find the strength to choose yourself? Please share your story in the comments below, because your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of triumph over family dysfunction. Share this video with anyone who needs to know they're not crazy for standing up to family abuse. Thank you for watching, and remember, the family you choose is often stronger than the family you're born into. May you find the courage to build the life you deserve, surrounded by people who truly value and support you.